everyone. We're going to have our amazing Miss Withers introduce our speaker right now. So please give your attention to Miss Withers.
Welcome again to our financial aid night. Thank you so much for joining us. We are very honored to have our wonderful speaker, Dino Koff. He is the Director of Financial Aid at Dartmouth College. Dartmouth College is a private Ivy League research university in Hanover, New Hampshire. It is the 9th oldest institution of higher education in the United States. Dino has worked in financial aid for over 30 years, and both in financial aid and student affairs with undergraduates and even graduate students in the School of Medicine and Law School. He has been committed to making sure students gain access to higher education and making college affordable for students so they can become lifetime learners and responsible leaders to make a strong impact in our society today. Again, thank you so much for joining us, but thank you so much, Dino, for being here. I know it's a little later on that coast, so we appreciate your time.
Thank you guys so much. I am so happy to be here. I said this last year that I really want to be in San Francisco, and so I'm going to say that again. Next year, I really want to be in San Francisco. So it's always so much fun to go out, but having the opportunity to Zoom is great and hopefully answer a lot of questions. So I am the Director of Financial Aid, and I always get a ton of questions, and I'm hoping to get some tonight. I'm not going to speak too long. I have a 6-hour presentation, and that was a joke. If you were sitting there wondering and looking at your watch, 6 hours here on the East Coast is going to be past my bedtime. But I only have, I think, right around 15 slides, and then hopefully we'll get some questions. Because this topic of financial aid can be complicated. It can be complex. You don't deal with it all the time, and once you do, you're already in it. And so this is going to be great. You're going to leave here with some resources. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to get started. And I'm going to tell you that the pictures that you see here have really nothing to do with the presentation. I just thought, I'm going to bring Hanover, New Hampshire, Dartmouth College into this presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about Dartmouth, but I'm also going to be at the 50,000 foot level. And I'm going to be talking about college financial aid, and financing and education. And like I said, I'll throw a little Dartmouth in there, but I'm going to also be a little global. So here we go. So I just say it's Financial Aid 101, and that's me. And here's an agenda. I keep this slide in here because I have a daughter that loves Mamma Mia and ABBA. And oh my gosh, ABBA coming out with new songs was just incredible in the last 2 weeks. But money, money, money. That's what we're going to talk about. You're going to leave here with resources. You're actually going to leave here with homework too. And then lots of questions, hopefully. So, if we were in person and I was giving this presentation and there were students in front of me also, I would literally be having students and parents to answer these questions. How does a student pay for college? And again, if we're in person, I would be having people raise their hand or just blurt out answers. You can't really do that here now. It's not the best for it, but how does a student, think about it for a second, how is a student going to pay for college? There is no right answer. There is no wrong answer. Every student has a different way to pay. But what we get excited about are scholarships and grants. What are they based on? So I have here merit-based scholarships, need-based grants. What's that all about? So merit-based, how I like to describe it is you have scholarships that are given out that are based on merit. What do I mean by merit? It's based on a talent. It might be an academic talent. It may be an athletic talent. It may be a arts talent. It could be, so you know that people may get athletic scholarships. You know that people may have really strong GPAs and SATs, maybe if people are taking standardized tests, and school. And so that's a talent. They might be very strong. So that's merit-based. Someone might be incredible in the arts. And all of that, depending on what the talent is, some schools will give money out for that talent. You also have, on the other side of merit-based aid, is need-based aid. And need-based aid is based on finances. So when you're applying to schools, you're going to be filling out an application for admissions. And in this application, you're going to be having an amazing story that you're telling. And you're going to talk about your experiences. You're going to have your GPA and the classes on your transcript, what you're taking, maybe a standardized test score, extracurricular activities, leadership opportunities, all of that. And at merit-based schools, they may give out financial aid based on all of that right away, where congratulations, you're admitted, and oh, by the way, here's a merit scholarship. At Dartmouth and many very selective schools are giving out need-based aid that are based on financial numbers. So we're not going to look at your SATs or GPA, or if there's class rank. We're not going to look at your soccer playing ability or your the way you can dance or play the tuba. We're going straight on these financial numbers. And these numbers are going to be, how much did your family earn? How much does your family have in savings? How many people are in your family? How many, so you have this salary, how many people is it supporting? How many people are in college right now? So it's looking at numbers and family finances. And so that's need-based aid. So part of your homework that you're going to get later is looking at what schools am I interested in? What's their financial aid based on? Is it based on merit? Is it based on need? Is it based on both? So Dartmouth and our Ivy League colleagues have need-based aid only. But every school is different. So you can check that out as you start looking at the financial aid systems. Okay, so going back to this, how does a student pay for college? I talk about scholarship and grants. Maybe it's a job on campus. And that can help pay for a job. Is what I like to say is for spending money. It's for fun money. It's for the 2 a.m. pizza or going to a show or a concert, a movie. It's maybe buying books. It's basically, in my mind, it's a paycheck every other week for work that's done. And that means the bank of mom and dad isn't as stressed as much, maybe, so that there's cash flow coming in for the student. Not as exciting to talk about, but there are loans that help students pay for college. And as we know, loans are in the news a lot right now. And every situation is different. Sometimes loans are a great strategy to pay for some families, and others, it may not be the best. And that's working with the college. And every student's financial aid award could be different. And it's using all of this possibly. It's looking at taking, maybe a family will take savings and scholarships and grants, and the student may work, you may have loans, putting that all together to make and pay for an education. So I mentioned savings earlier also. And then I always have fun with this, Powerball. Like if you win $4.2 billion in Powerball, awesome, you probably don't need financial aid. And if you do win it, please feel free to donate it to your current school and your college. Life is good. So feel free to do that. If you take from this talk one thing and you say, oh, he said play Powerball. This is a joke. You don't need to do this. You may not win. Okay, so we know how you pay for college. There's all these different avenues, but where does the money come from? And this is something that there's different pockets of money. So when we talk about it, again, if I was in front of students, we would be having this conversation, where does money come from? And you would hear the federal government. But you would hear the government, and I would say, okay, which government? And we would talk about the federal government. So, okay, Washington, D.C., they give out money. They give out money in grants. They give out money. Those are need-based grants for undergraduate students called Pell Grants. They're sometimes, again, need-based supplemental educational opportunity grants. And so federal money in grants for low-income students. They also give out loans. And these loans can be for low-income students. They can be for middle income. They can be for high income. There are loans that are given out by the federal government to help a student pay for college. The loans could be in the student's name. They could also be in the parent name if a parent wants a loan. So you have the federal government. You have the state government. And obviously California has an incredible state grant. And that can't really leave the state, but for people staying in California, that may be an option. Some states have different resources. Some states will have some loans. Since I'm just talking about California, to the great state of California, I'm not going to go into depth here, into a lot of detail, but there is a Cal grant. You're gonna apply for that, and you can get more information definitely from the college counseling office, because they're experts in that area. Schools, and so usually when we're in front of students, I'm in front of students giving a presentation, and I get the governments, and I hear FAFSA, and I maybe get to state government, and sometimes we don't get to schools right away, and that is going to be probably the biggest money source there is for people, is the institution that you're applying to. So at Dartmouth this year, we have $135 or $136 million that we're giving out. We don't just do that to one student. We give that out across the board to about 48% of our population this year. But I say that number because, one, it's a very large number, but two, I just want you to hear that, okay, Dartmouth is giving out this type of money. Well, what other schools are you looking at? You want to find out how much money is going to be given out. You don't need the specific amount of $135 million, but okay, what is the money? When I say where's the money coming from, we know that they have merit. If a school might have merit, or they might have need-based aid, great. We know that need-based aid comes from the federal government, comes from the state government. Schools, as we said earlier, could be merit, could be need-based, but okay, how much? Like, are they tuition scholarships if they're merit? Are they half tuition? Are they quarter tuition? What? But it's something that you want to start researching. And again, schools are giving out and helping discount tuition and maybe room and board also for students. And then finally, community resources. And this is sometimes overlooked. We have this year, I was just talking to colleagues in the office, and just today we had over 400 checks being processed for outside scholarships. These are community resources across the country where our students come from, who are getting, they range really small to very large, and meaning they may be a $250 scholarship. Wonderful. We just paid for a couple of textbooks. That's awesome. They may be a little bit more. Great. But you've heard of the big ones, maybe the Gates, the Jack Kent Cooke. Those are big organizations giving out large amounts of money. And but there's also resources in San Francisco. They're in the Bay Area that you can start looking for. And you may say, where do I start looking for that? If you do a Google search, you're probably going to have 6.8 billion hits. And so it's trying to narrow things down. One of the things I always say is, if you know somebody who is in college talking to their family, okay, what outside scholarships did you hear about? Like, for example, I live in Vermont, right across the river from Dartmouth in New Hampshire. And the Boston Red Sox give out $1,000 scholarship to every high school based on service. Awesome. That's great. How do you find out about that? And that's like word of mouth or hearing different things advertised. So you want to start doing your research on community resources ahead of time, because if you wait, you pick your school and you wait for the summer to start looking for it, you're probably going to be too late and you're going to start looking for your second year, actually.
Dina, we actually have a question. Will scholarships and grants affect financial aid?
So will scholarships and grants affect financial aid? And so is that outside scholarships and grants?
Can you answer it for both?
Yeah. So if they're institutional, if I'm giving out a scholarship and grant, that's awesome. That's going to be given out to a student. That's only going to enhance them. And so does it affect financial aid? It's what you're applying for. So life is good. On the community resource side, if you're bringing in an outside scholarship and grant, for some schools that meet full need, and I'll explain that later, like Dartmouth, where when you fill out everything, which we'll go over, and you have a family ability to pay $5,000, we're going to give you financial aid all but $5,000. We can fit in a limited amount of money of outside scholarship. So I say this, meaning the record that I've seen was 4 years ago, a student brought in $87,000. We can't have the student have that. So what we did, because you can't go above our costs, we called these foundations and these places that granted this money. And this student got some money carried over for other years, but also graduate school, because the student wasn't going to need it. So I always say that there's always money that we can fit in to help a student. So if someone brings in $2,000, we can fit that in to make that work. We can't always fit in a $10,000 or $12,000 scholarship. But part of the reason we can't is because we're already funding at such a high level. Not every school is like that. And so that's why as you start applying and getting grants, you'll want to talk to the schools to see, okay, how does this impact my award? Again, if you get a $5,000 outside scholarship and we can only give you $3,000 of it, life is still good. You're plus $3,000. It just means that we've met your full cost and we can't have you go over. So really important. And I sometimes I hear people say, well, why should I apply? It's just going to lower my scholarship. Again, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a positive situation for you. You may not net 100% of it if you end up at with a very large outside scholarship, but you'll net a lot of it or most of it so that it can only help you. That's a really good question. Okay, so here's some of your homework. And you have here a couple things before I give you your homework. And I say financial aid at Dartmouth because every school is different. So we practice need-blind admissions. And what is that all about? I thought this was a financial aid workshop. Well, I do want to just mention that need-blind admissions is the Cadillac plan in the sense of admissions decisions. So at Dartmouth, we don't look at your financials when we're admitting. So for example, what does that mean? You apply to Dartmouth or there's right around 50 schools in the country that are need blind. And that means that you're going to apply. Your admissions decision is going to be based solely on your application. And so when you're applying to Dartmouth, admissions looks at it. You only get sent to financial aid once you're admitted. You may not know you're admitted yet, but meaning we announce all of our decisions at the same time. But need blind is essentially you're getting your admissions application is being looked at, and it's not money is not part of the decision. And I say that because the opposite of need blind is need aware. And if you're applying to need aware schools, they're actually going to possibly look and say, okay, how much is this going to cost if we admit this student? Can we afford to admit this student? And that's something that's really important, because when you have a need aware school, if you need financial aid and you know that you can't afford a school without financial aid, but you don't apply to you don't apply for financial aid and you miss the deadline, there's a chance you could be admitted to a school and they don't give you financial aid because you said you missed the deadline to apply. And so for need aware schools, 9 times out of 10, it's at the time of application, they want to see your your financial aid material. We don't do that at Dartmouth, but this is for ways that schools are able to control their financial aid budgets. And so as you can see, we're need blind, and down below you'll see we guarantee to meet 100% of demonstrated financial need. So that means, as I said earlier, if you have a $5,000 family ability to pay, and we're going to give you financial aid up to the $5,000 of the family ability to pay. And so we will always give that 100%. We will meet 100% of your financial need. And not every school does that. And that's part of your homework. And how to tell all of this, as you can see here, I have a calculator and my intuition, quick college cost estimate. And you can go on any website, any college financial aid website, if they're accepting federal funds, and you can do these calculators. My intuition, I think we were the 3rd school on it, or 4th school, and now I understand there's more than 150. I'm highlighting this for you because this takes 3 minutes and 27 seconds to fill out. It is that easy. And you can log on, you can answer the questions. It's in English, it's in Spanish. You can answer these questions and you will have an estimate right away. And that's my intuition. It's an estimate, it's a range, and it's not exact. But I highlight it because it's 3 minutes and 27 seconds. Every college, though, has to have a net price calculator if you accept federal money. And a net price calculator is supposed to be your actual formula. So you can log on, you can go onto our website, you don't have to log on. You can just go onto our website, and we have a net price calculator, not just my intuition, but another one. And the net price calculator, it's going to take you 20 minutes to fill out. That's why I highlight my intuition. It's 20 minutes to fill out, and it's the exact formula of what we use. So you can input your numbers. If there are senior parents on this, we're looking at, for next year, we're going to look at your 2020 taxes. Guess what? Hopefully your 2020 taxes are done. And so if they are, you can go on to these college websites and fill out the calculators because you already have the 2020 numbers. And that's the numbers we're going to use in this admission cycle. So with that being said, it takes about 20 minutes. You want your taxes in front of you. You're going to fill it out: income, assets, number in college, number in family, taxes paid. It's going to ask all of this stuff. That's why I like to say if you have your taxes done, it makes it easier. But on that, you're going to find out, okay, does this college meet 100% of demonstrated need? Did they give you a family contribution and then the rest is financial aid? And the aid could still be loans, it could be work, it could be scholarship. But did they meet your financial need? And those are the schools that again, that's the Cadillac part of it. You had need blind admissions and then also meeting 100% of demonstrated financial need. Not every school does it. So it's good to check out what schools you're looking at, what they offer. At Dartmouth, we offer free tuition. So we offer scholarships we guarantee scholarships that cover tuition for families whose income is below $125,000. You might say, wait, I don't make $125,000. You still can be eligible for aid, and actually for families earning under $125,000, our average scholarship is $67,000, I think, this year. So that's huge. Our overall average scholarship this year is $62,000, and this year just started for us. So I have our budgeted scholarship amount is $136 million. So just some tidbits from us that you'll see. I want to highlight the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. It's a federal form that opens October 1. And you're going to fill that out once. Not once, you'll fill it out each year, but you're going to fill it out. The first time you fill it out, and you're going to put all the schools you're applying to. And you submit it, and it goes to the government, who then gives it to all the schools you're applying to. You may have to log back on if you're applying to a lot of schools because there's only a certain number of spaces, but you can log back on, put more schools on, sends it to the government sends it to colleges. We download it, we have it.
Hey, Dino. I'm so sorry, Dino. I just wanted to let you know, for all our guests, we did put the link on My Intuition or the chat and a testimonial how easy it is. And in a moment, we'll put in the net price calculator for those FAFSA only schools that the government highlights. But we do have some questions, Dino. One is, hello, what if you're waiting for your green card? Are you not eligible for FAFSA? And just to highlight, as Dino answered that question, and I'm happy to project, in California, we do have the California Dream Act, which is just for with our California high school students who are our dreamers. So we do have a special program for them.
So really good questions, and we do see a lot of different status situations, and especially with COVID, there's been a lot of backlogs with processing documents with the government, and so students can work with the school applicants, specifically depending on your status, and if it is, for example, if it's a DACA, the state of California will have some forms. At Dartmouth, we would not require a FAFSA for people who are not eligible for federal aid, but we would require the profile, which I was just about to talk about, because that's the only form that we would request. But every school can be different, and I want to highlight that. And if status changes in the middle of the application process, or honestly, we see it change in the middle of the academic year, for example, you'll come and work with a financial aid office, and you can talk about your new status, and we can see what your eligibility is. So there are many schools that have a lot of experience working with students maybe who don't have a green card, but can help guide through the process. I know that at Dartmouth, we have a fair amount of students. We have the most in the Ivy. I think we have 45 or 50 students that don't have green cards that might be undocumented or DACA. So,
yeah, and the nice thing, Dino, in California, again, if a parent is undocumented, then it's about the student. So if the student is a U.S. citizen or have their green card, yes, they could go ahead and do the financial aid form. But if both parties don't, then there is the California Dream Act that all our California private and public schools do have. And I'll put that link for the California Dream Act, and then also the FAFSA for everyone. But there's a great question, because FAFSA doesn't ask about housing, Dino, but we have a lot of housing questions on right now. Because as you know, the Bay Area, someone put it, is cash tight, but high in home equity. How do schools adjust for regional differences? And then could you answer that for schools that only request the FAFSA from what your experience being in financial aid, and then schools that do require the FAFSA and this extra financial aid form that you will tell everyone about, the CSS profile?
Great, thank you. So some really good questions, everybody. This is awesome. So let me just start. The FAFSA is not going to ask for the home value, but it does ask for investments. So if you have a second property and also investment property, it will ask for that. But the FAFSA is a streamlined doc. It's becoming easier and easier, which is wonderful to fill out. It just doesn't go as in depth for need-based schools. So let me tell you how we deal with San Francisco, quite honestly. In other areas, DC, San Francisco, Hawaii, we do have a COLA, cost of living adjustment that we're using in our formulas because absolutely the prices in California are just, I'm always amazed when I walk in these amazing cities. And other than the traffic, I fall in love with these places. And but then I also look at the price tags. When I'm walking by a realtor's office, and I look at it and I just think, oh, I need to win Powerball. But we do use a cost of living adjustment to try to help in that situation. California is very tough, but it is we're clearly being able to figure something out with it because it's one of our largest enrolling states at Dartmouth. But the FAFSA only schools may not see your large home equity, but sort of the need-based schools will ask for it on this profile document. And the profile goes a little bit more in depth, and that's why we as a need-based school are using it. So a FAFSA asks very specific questions. It talks about, and I'll get into this later, a custodial parent and a non-custodial parent, parent A, parent B. If there's a divorced family, the profile is looking at a family. And it's also then saying, okay, if there's parents that are divorced, it's going to look at two parents in that sense. So if a family's remarried, we break out finances. So we'll never, if both parents are remarried, for example, we will never look at four people's finances. We break out finances for parents, and everybody has different situations. And later on, I talk about your situation could be very unique, and it's not like the person, if we were in person sitting next to you, or it may not be your neighbor's situation. But that's one of the great things I think about. I know about my office is we're setting up Zooms nonstop with families to understand what is happening. But the profile does go more in depth. It's going to ask for real estate. It's going to look at home equity. But again, being from California in the Bay Area, it's actually doing it by zip code also. So it's not just California. You're also getting the benefit of San Francisco area. Okay. Are we good with questions? Can I keep going? Awesome. So you see, last thing I want to highlight here is no income cutoffs. Please know that it's worth doing these calculators. If there's an $800,000 income and there's a $2.5 million properties, you probably can afford this on your own. But if you're thinking, well, I'm on a borderline, it's worth checking it out, because someone could call or Zoom, or if I was in person, and say, make $350,000. This is what I look like. Would I qualify? It's a formula. It's looking, as I said, at your income, at your assets. It's also looking at the net value of, so if you have mortgages or something on that, on a property. But it's also looking at, you have 2 kids in college at once, or will you? Maybe you have a kid going to college next year, and 2 years from now you'll have 2 in college. Well, that impacts the formula. Maybe not the first year and the second year, but the third year you may be getting able to get more financial aid or qualify for aid that third year. So I just say it's always a formula, and it's worth checking out. So I keep saying the schools can be different. I've mentioned it. I can tell you for us, the FAFSA, for people who will qualify for federal aid, we have the Cal Dream Act form. And again, that's really not for out of state, but you at least see that there. The profile I just mentioned, we're going to look at your taxes, as I mentioned earlier. The 2020 taxes, if you're a senior parent, if you're a junior parent, it's going to be it'll be 2021 taxes. And then there's institutional forms. It may be, for us, we have a simple institutional form. Again, every school can be different, and that's part of your homework, checking that out. I mentioned earlier, divorced parents, every school handles them differently. If you're a FAFSA only school, you're going to be, you're not going to be putting both, you're not going to be putting parents down. You'll be putting one parent down on the FAFSA. If you're divorced, and it's putting how it's defined is the parent that is giving more than 50% support. So if it's 50-50, I always talk about flipping a coin. But if it's 55-45, well, that tells you what it is. And so it's the parent giving more support. Again, check out with all the schools you're looking at how every school handles it, so that you know the process and you can fill this out correctly. I always talk about the role of financial aid. This is a team effort, my friends. We are on your team. Our goal is to create access. Admissions opens a big door to any of the colleges your son or daughter are going to be looking. And financial aid is there to try to help you keep that door open with access. Can we do it all the time? No, because sometimes we'll see families that, okay, they have a very large income, they have large assets, but they're saying, and everybody's different, right? They're saying, I can't afford this. We're going to fund something else. And that's fine. But know that here's your team. You have hopefully the parents, hopefully obviously the students. Maybe there's federal aid, there's institutional aid. Like, how can we make this work? Not just to pick a school, but for 4 years. And so it is hopefully a 4-year relationship that you're going to have. If you're interested in financial aid and receiving financial aid, it's a 4-year relationship and beyond. We love when we're speaking with alums also. So it's definitely a lot of fun when alums are coming back and talking to us about X, Y, or Z, and we get to keep the relationship going. Some hidden costs, just want to show you additional costs, off-campus programs. So this is actually a picture in Morocco and a Dartmouth program that we have. But, are there more costs? At Dartmouth, your financial aid goes with you for off-campus programs. We used to call these study abroad, and we don't anymore because we have some programs in the United States. And so I highlight the off-campus programs. Every school is different. Some schools, you pay your normal tuition, and then there's an extra charge for the off-campus program. And so just want you to know about it. Medical costs. I know that sometimes, depending on your insurance, in California, there's some HMOs that will only do emergency costs in other states or in New Hampshire. And that doesn't meet the New Hampshire requirements. So you may have to get health insurance through the school. At Dartmouth, we cover 50% of the cost with scholarship for anybody who's on financial aid. But I'm putting it out there saying, okay, here are some extra costs. Internships, if it's an unpaid internship, there may be some extra costs also. Every school is different. We do have a lot of extra funding for experiential learning and off-campus experiences, but some places don't. So that could cause some extra out-of-pocket costs. And I always say non-enrollment periods. And there could be, again, and that's tied to internships. But just looking at trying to highlight, you have these costs, you know that I'll explain what a cost of attendance is in a second, but there are some things that don't fit some in here. Some.
Yeah, Dino, I actually wish some, when I was applying for my kids, I didn't realize that some campuses won't even take my own health insurance because it has to be in, if it's an out-of-state health insurance. So can you talk about that? Because pretty much all the universities require health insurance, and how some can be particular, and how some, like you said, do cover the costs or not?
Absolutely. So like I can give very specifics. We have students that will have California state insurance, maybe through Medicaid. That won't work that doesn't work in New Hampshire. It just won't be paid. And so the state of New Hampshire requires health insurance at a comparable level, at a certain comparable level. And so we would then require a student to take that cost on. And as I said, we cover 50% of it for scholarship, with scholarship for students on financial aid. But every school is different. And so you do want to check that out. Is your insurance good in your local area? So there are some insurances that are wonderful, but when you leave your area, they only cover emergencies. And that's not comparable insurance to what states require many times. So you can't get a waiver, and you may be buying some more insurance. So it's something that as you're starting to pick a school, you're going to look at that because that could be another significant cost. So I want to move on to the College Affordability and Transparency Center, long title. Here's more of your homework. And I say this because these sites, as you're in the beginning stages of learning about your colleges that you're thinking about applying to, these sites, we have to submit a lot of data to the Department of Education. And specifically, we submit, and I'll show you in a second what it looks like, but we submit our retention rates, like how many people are coming back from year 1 to year 2. How many people are defaulting on student loans? How many people are graduating in 4 years? How many people are graduating in 6 years? How is the college safety? What are the crime stats? We submit everything to the Department of Education. And what happens now is they've created some, as you can see, transparency centers. They've come up with the College Navigator, College Scorecard. And I mentioned the net price calculator already. This site has a link to all the net price calculators. So if you're looking at Stanford and you don't want to go search on their site, you could go to the collegecost.ed.gov website, and you can click on the net price calculators, and then it will take, you can type in Stanford and you could go there, or Dartmouth, or any of the schools you're looking at. But why this is so good is this will give you specific information about your school. So here's what it looks like. The Navigator, I'm highlighting. You don't really have to worry about the 90-10 information, but just so you can see, here's what we're looking at. But this is Dartmouth's, and all in one spot. Here's our tuition and fees. Here's our financial aid, like what are we giving out? Admissions information. But what I really want to highlight for you is retention rate for graduation. So many times I talk with families who, and it could be my kids' friends, who are saying, oh, I'm looking at schools X, Y, and Z. And I always send the parents and the students here because you do want to see, all right, why is the retention rate at 62%? Well, and I'm using that as an example. That's not Dartmouth's. Ours is incredibly high, but you will then call that admissions office and say, okay, I'm looking at your retention rate. Why are 4 out of 10 students not coming back? Or I was just working with a student who was interested in theater schools that had a 47% graduation. And I'm not saying that that's a bad school. I'm just saying you need to ask why. Why are these students not graduating in 4 years or not graduating in 6 years? Something that's really important to take a look at. And then I also so these are different things that I like to highlight on these pages when you're looking at other schools too, because then you can do some comparisons. But campus security, you have to take this with a grain of salt, but it's worth taking a look at. And I say it's worth you got to just a little grain of salt with it, is because there are schools in Boston on the Boston Commons, and those schools are literally across the street from this beautiful park. And if there's a theft in the park, it shows up as a statistic on the school's crime stat. So I say this saying just to learn, okay, what's going on with campus security? But then also you might want to ask a few more questions, because we don't know all the context of everything. So this site is part of your homework, but you can also see all in one spot. You don't have to research. Dartmouth has 6,509 total students. 4,400 are undergraduate, and our student to faculty ratio is 7:1. You can see that about all the schools that you're going to and looking at. How many students do they have to faculty? How big of a school is it? Different things like that. And then, of course, you can take a look. On net price, that's something to take a look at. What does net price mean? We're going to talk about it later, but it's essentially if a school costs $75,000 and you're getting financial aid, what is your out-of-pocket cost? If you're not paying $75,000, what are you actually paying? And we'll go over that. They give different income ranges on this website, so you can check that out. All right, we're flying. All right, only a couple more slides, and then hopefully we'll have some questions.
Great. And then Dino, I do know we have some guests who have their hands up. We are only taking questions on the Q&A. So chat is disabled. There are all the links from even the collegecost.edu, CSS profile example. But if you do have a question, please type them in the Q&A below, and then we'll be happy to ask those questions for you. So thank you, Dino.
Awesome. So cost of attendance, everybody. This is a really important, if we were old school here and we had a chalkboard, we'd be writing that out and be pounding, saying you have to understand what this is. And I say that because what is the cost of attendance? The cost of attendance is every educational expense that your son or daughter may have while they go to college. So every college has to create a cost of attendance. It can also be called a cost of education. And we come up with a cost of education for each year. Cost of education includes, and you'll see here, it includes, so I put a sample here. This is not any school, but it can include tuition, fees, health insurance, room, food, books. It can include miscellaneous items. You're buying shampoo now, or someone's buying shampoo now. We want you to do that in college also. Toothpaste, things like that, personal items, incidentals, maybe cell phone. Transportation, especially if you're leaving the Bay Area, even in the Bay Area, there's a cost. So transportation is part of the cost of education. I'm not talking about credit card debt. I'm not talking about spring break, right? Because that's not part of the cost of education. But specifically, what costs do you have that help you lead towards gaining credit in a degree? So here's different examples. We're going to do a quick example: tuition, housing, meals, books, fees, miscellaneous items. Boom. There still could be transportation. There's some other health insurance that could be put in. So we're saying in this example, $67,530. With that, that's the cost of attendance. Notice that when we talk about, we can't just talk about tuition, because there's $17,000 more in this example than just the cost of tuition. So even though the cost of tuition is the bulk of this number, it's really important to know that you have to look at the whole cost of attendance. Okay. So in this example, the cost of attendance, I'm saying there's a $50,000 scholarship. And it can be merit, it can be need-based. I'm just saying there's a $50,000 scholarship. The net cost, what's the net price? To you, it's $17,530. That's to the student, to the family, however we break it up. Notice that I haven't put in loans yet. I haven't put in work. And someone might say, yeah, but the school's offering work and loans. And you're saying my net cost is $17,000. But you have to remember this, loans have to be repaid. The scholarship is not. So work, you have to work to get the money. So if you have a work study job on campus and you're making $15 an hour, working in a lab, let's say, if you don't work, you don't get paid. There's a work component. So it's really important to know that that's still not part of your net cost. That's outside it, just like loans are. So the net cost in this example is $17,530. I'm saying that we have a $6,030 parent contribution. We have a student contribution of $3,000. That could be a summer job where they're asked to come up with a certain amount of money. 3,000 seems a little bit high, but I've seen some schools that have done a job on campus during the year of $3,000. Again, this is for the miscellaneous items. This is for fun. This isn't the work part that you see here isn't to pay the college. It's to sustain your budget through the academic year. And then a loan, maybe. So a government has a $5,500 loan for first-year students that, if you're eligible for federal aid, may be subsidized, which $3,500 may be subsidized, which means the government is picking up the interest while you're in school. Might be unsubsidized, which means interest is accruing while you're in school. That's part of, do you have need? And you're going to fill out all the forms that will determine if the loans are subsidized or unsubsidized. If it's subsidized and it's a federal loan, the government's paying the interest. Okay, so a parent might say, I don't have $6,000 in this example. We saved $3,000. A parent could take out a plus loan, a parent loan for undergraduate studies. A parent could take out a private loan through a bank or a national lender or a credit union. There are different options to make this happen. A parent may say, no, I do have $6,000. Great. A student might say, I don't have the full student contribution, but I have part of it. And it's all about how to make things work. And that's when, after you get your award, you're going to talk to the school and you're going to say, okay, we can come up with this. How do we do the bulk of this? And we're working with families all the time, coming up with strategies to maybe keep loans lower at first, using some money that's saved up so that interest isn't accruing on loans as we go as much until later on in the academic cycle. So many different options that we're doing to make things work. Parent might say, I don't want my kid to take $5,500. I'm fine with them taking $3,000. I'm going to come up with an extra $2,500. Great. We can make that happen also. We can work with you and try to be as flexible as possible. So there's an example. And then here's your financial aid homework. The net price calculator is the navigator. Go find outside scholarships and then talk to schools about scholarships. There's one thing I want to highlight that I didn't put in here. Life happens. And we have seen more and more awful situations where with COVID, the job loss has been incredible. We've seen people furloughed, downsized. We've seen businesses close. We have just seen so much health issues, death, unfortunately. There's just been a huge impact to families. And here's the deal. We don't know what's going on unless we're told. And I use this as an example of if you had a first year in college right now, so if you had a son or daughter that was a first year that's starting, we just started last week. But if you had a first year starting, honestly, you're using 2019 income. And we don't know how COVID impacted your family. We don't know if 2020 is lower significantly, or if people don't have jobs anymore or have huge health bills, for example. So that's where the communication with the financial aid office is really important. Know that if it was this year and your 2019 income was looking really good, and in 2020 everything shattered, and income was way down, health costs, COVID impact, non-COVID impact, but something changed. Work with us, because there are ways that we can adjust your base year and say, okay, we're not going to use your 19 income. We're going to do your 20 income. Because why? We have your 20 income taxes now. We can also look at 21. How is that impacted? We're far enough in the year. Could we do an estimate on that? So many different options for life happening. And for some schools, like us and like our peer schools, we're making changes all the time when life happens. Other schools may not have the flexibility to do that, but it's worth having that conversation. Okay.
Dino, before you go to the next one, so sorry for interrupting there. And thank you for emphasizing that, because I think so many times people think, well, that's it, and not feeling comfortable or not knowing that's an option to having that conversation. So thank you for that. But we're having a couple of questions out there right now about merit-based scholarships. So I know every school's different, but a lot of people want to know, like, wait, I don't have to do the FAFSA to get merit-based scholarships for all the colleges? Or is that an answer for some? So could you address that?
I absolutely can. So those are one of my, every school is different, and you'll want to ask the school specifically. There are many schools that will say, at the time of admission, we are giving merit-based awards, and they are not looking at a FAFSA at all. And so you may not have to fill it out. There are others that are saying to qualify for financial aid, even if it's a merit award, we want a FAFSA. So it's really worth checking each school out that you're interested in. But it's very possible that you may not be filling out any. If you say, there's no way we're qualifying for need-based aid, and you're looking at different schools that have merit aid who say it's given at the time of admission, you don't have to fill anything out. There's no extra application. Definitely possible that you wouldn't have to fill out a FAFSA.
Thank you.
Really,
and then
good question.
No, it's a great question. And then we have another one. It's actually one of my favorite. I think it's important. So the family's saying, like, we understand the net price and cost calculators, but what about ROI, return on investment calculators, in aggregate and or by degree or placement, jobs, income from universities? Furthermore, they wanted to imply that for students and parents who have a statistical understanding of likely outcomes in 4 years upon graduation. I know I have my website that I go to, but where do you go for this information?
Well, I first of all, that is a home run question. So all of them have been great. Return on investment. For me, when I work at a school that is $75,000 in total cost, that is the investment. And what are you getting out of it? And one of the examples I use is we publish for us, and other schools do this too. We're actually putting out statistics on where students are getting jobs, where students are going to graduate school. I was working with a family that, when I say working, meaning it was a neighbor's kids who wanted to go to medical school. That was their goal. And talking about return on investment, was there a path to go to medical school from the school that they were looking at? And that was something really important because the school had never sent anybody to medical school. And knowing that stuff, not saying every kid's going to go to medical school, but and wants to go to medical school, but these are the questions that I always say. There are different sites, but you have to go and ask the schools and get specific things. And you know, everybody can say, all right, we have 88% of our graduates are hired. I'm just using that as an example. I don't know the exact number. Not good enough, right? Because a school could hire 10 students, and if it's a small school, that brings the numbers up. And so I'm always saying push to go talk. We have a Center for Professional Development for people who were in my generation of college. That used to be called Career Services, and now it's Center for Professional Development. And for us, we're using that information. We're having them do presentations for us because they're working with the employers that are coming in. And you want to know how many people, if service is really important, how many, and people are talking about AmeriCorps and Peace Corps and Teach for America. Awesome. All right. If that's what you want, and I know a student that is so interested in that, where is there a path? And we have many students that are doing that. And it's really asking and saying and talking to people. I used the example of a theater major earlier. There was a theater major parent that we were talking about. We had them talk to alums to talk about their path to getting to making a livable wage in the arts, and which is tough at first. And so I always say the onus is on the school to make sure parents are comfortable. Students may be comfortable at looking at a school and getting excited about a school, but there is an investment, and I think it's also very important for parents to be comfortable. I see the outcomes that could happen. That doesn't guarantee them, but there are paths to get you to the internships that you think your child may have, may need to get from, get to a position or to get to a graduate school. The grades are important, but it's the extracurricular experiences. Can you get those? And it's talking to students, and it's talking to current students there. It might be talking to young alums, but your homework is investigating this. So it's such a really good question, because you're investing 4 years, hopefully. Your son or daughter is investing 4 years with a lot of work, but the financial part could be immense also, and you want to make sure you're being set up for a good trajectory to take off.
Dina, would you say now that the college scorecard by the federal government that has that average salary, or using other sites like LinkedIn to see where job placements are at that school, or pay scale with the average salary, would those be other resources just in case a family wants more immediate information versus waiting for them? Would you think those are also good resources for return on investments?
I think they're good, but with a grain of salt also, because there are schools that might show average starting salary at $85,000, for example. But if you take out the finance and investment side, it may really only be, and it's still fine, and it might be $60,000 or $55,000. And so you just have to know how is it being broken out, and what's the data going in.
Right.
It is tough to figure out, and there's nothing wrong with pushing a little, because it is tough at some smaller schools that may have less graduates in a certain field. It's sometimes tough to figure out what students are making.
And then
in
we
that
also
area.
Oh, I apologize. Yes, thank you for that. And also, we have another question about financial aid. Does applying early decision one, or early decision two, or regular affect financial aid? And for those who may not know, early decision two is it's another option in January for applying early decision, and both early decisions are binding agreements. So could you address that, please?
I don't even know why I'm here, everybody, because these questions are I mean, you guys are doing great. Like, this is awesome. So early decision, financial aid. I want to highlight when I talked about need blind versus need aware. If you need financial aid, you need to apply for it by the deadlines of each school. And I say this because if you are applying early decision, it is binding. You're going to sign a document. A college counselor is going to sign a document. A student, parent, college counselor all sign, essentially saying this student's going to get in and they're agreeing to come. And so with that being said, the first thing I like to say is it's really important that if you need aid, you do apply. Because the worst thing to happen as a parent is to see a kid bawling because they got into their school, but no one applied for aid on time. And part of that is the thought process of, if I apply for aid, we look like we're going to cost more money. So I don't want to apply and we'll figure it out. But if you can't figure it out, schools, again, that are need aware aren't going to come back and give you money because they've given their money out. So the tiers, if a student gets into a very competitive school but hasn't applied for aid because, and we see this sometimes with, we are not need aware, we are need blind, but we will have people who will not apply for aid until after they're in, and we feel bad because they have to wait longer for their award because we release our awards immediately. And so I like to say, if you need aid, just apply. Now, with that said, need aware schools are so this is exactly how it happens. Early decision. A school accepts, I'm just throwing these numbers, making these up. A school accepts 500 students and they have a budget of $10 million for early decision, okay? And what happens is, admissions will look at the applications and they will say, we want to admit all these people, and here are the people who said they're applying for aid, and they give them to financial aid. Financial aid does the work, and then they send it back to admissions and says, hey, you've admitted all these people, and it's $13 million being spent on the people you admitted. Admissions has an awful task of then going through it saying, okay, we have to get this down to 10 million. How do we do that? So on need blind schools like us, that doesn't happen. Like our peer schools, that doesn't happen. It's wonderful. It's a luxury. But I have colleagues in the financial aid field, and it's just heart-wrenching when they can't do it. So that I'm bringing this story up and explaining it this way because some people will say, but I'm not going to apply. My kid's at a disadvantage. But just remember, if you need aid, it is very important that you apply by the deadlines because you can't get it afterwards. And so with that being said, early decision 1, early decision 2, are you at a disadvantage? At most schools that are need aware, they're going to be admitting people that are qualified, and there is a chance financial aid could slow up an admission, but honestly, I've seen kids cry and parents are heartbroken because they didn't apply for the aid and their kid got it. That is awful. So, and it's so tough to see. And I every early decision round at Dartmouth, I just feel so lucky that we admit and life is good. But not every school is as lucky. So I encourage you. Financial aid could impact early decision, could impact regular decision depending on the school, but it's more important that if you need the aid, you apply.
Question. Any statistics on Ivy League or top private schools on legacy versus non-legacy placement for career outcomes? You don't have to ask in pub. Oh, sorry. Yes.
So I don't think these are private numbers, for example. So meaning when we see legacy, what that highlights for us, I can tell you at Dartmouth, you get a green dot. And what does that mean? That means that you have had a legacy, a parent that has come through, and you go through a reading track, and it's not as much of I would argue that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20, all of that meant much more than it does now. The bottom line is at our schools and our peer schools, the opportunities are immense. We talked about the return on investment. I get to see that return on investment, which is just remarkable. But I also see the internships and the extracurricular activities. And I don't think worrying about legacy versus non-legacy. I think it's more, what am I going to get involved in, and what do I want to take advantage of with that. I don't think, I think schools more and more are just incredibly transparent, and in the sense of, I don't think legacies, like on internships and things, I don't think our Center for Professional Development is paying that much attention to that at all. I think it's more, all right, students are wanting these experiences. How can we help get them these experiences? But I can tell you what a legacy means is you're going to get a green dot at Dartmouth on a folder, if it was a real folder anymore. It used to be a folder. It's all online now, reading paperless. But and it just meant that it's just being read with the green dot as a legacy. But it's not like, oh, this person has a better chance at getting in. We have a lot of legacy families apply. I can say that without a doubt. And so we could fill a class on legacies, and we don't. I mean, maybe 10%.
Well, I think as our parents are saying, they're saying thank you so much. You mean so much to us for the outside counseling community and outside SI counseling for our students and our parents and guardians. We can't say thank you enough, except grazie.
Grazie, prego, wonderful. Well, thank you all very much. And,